In this political coliseum, we slay the rising beast with the fateful sword of truth that transcends hypocrisy and censorship. It's time to unleash yourself from the tyrants of media propaganda on the America Out Loud Talk Radio Network. This is Unleashed, the Political News Hour.
Welcome to Unleashed, the Political News Hour. I'm Mayor Deb, your host. Today's show, I want to delve into this idea that the Federal Bureau of Investigation, otherwise known as the FBI, is it an organization that is swayed by current politics, or is it an apolitical organization? I'm going to be bringing on retired FBI agent David Baldovin to talk about some of these points. And before I get there, though, I just wanted to go through a brief history of the FBI. And I want to do this because I feel that there are so many people who always hear the three letters FBI, and they think that they may know very well about what their role is within the federal government. But to clarify that, here's a few highlights. The FBI is the primary domestic law enforcement agency who is responsible for enforcing federal laws and investigating crimes within the U.S. Their jurisdiction operates within the United States, though sometimes they have a role in counterterrorism or counterintelligence that can involve international threats that would impact the United States. The powers that they have are to make arrests and prosecute offenders under U.S. law, and they operate under the Department of Justice and report to the Attorney General. So that's just a quick overview of what the FBI organization structure looks like. And a little history now, the FBI was actually established back in 1908, and it has changed its names 3 times since then, and has grown from under 40 employees to more than 35,000 employees to date. So back in 1906, President Teddy Roosevelt appointed Charles Bonaparte as Attorney General, and he recognized the need for a federal investigative body. So in 1908 is when Bonaparte established the Bureau of Investigation within the Department of Justice. And then in 1933, the Bureau of Investigation becomes the Division of Investigation, the DOI. And in 1935, the Division of Investigation became an independent service within the Department of Justice. And so that's just a quick overview. As most of you know, today, Kash Patel is the director of the FBI, and Patel was confirmed by the Senate to that position in February of 2025 under President Trump. And Patel has stated a couple of goals that he looks to bring forth as his tenure in this position. One of his goals is increased transparency. And there's a word, transparency, that I feel is thrown around so much in the world of politics. But what Patel is really, I believe, hoping to do is to increase that transparency, not just use the word within the FBI. And another big item that Patel has interest in fixing is this public trust. And I think today, now more than ever, there is a huge public distrust of these three-letter government agencies. I think a lot of that points back to the January 6th incident and the way that that was handled thereafter. So stick around for retired FBI agent David Baldovin coming up after this short break. And welcome back, everyone. Joining me now is David Baldovin. David is a retired FBI agent who has served from 1969 until 2000. And within that time span, he spent many years on the SWAT team. And he has been very vocal about his concerns regarding the current state of the FBI. He has significant experience in law enforcement tactics and crisis management as well. And I really invited him here today because I want to have a candid discussion about law enforcement issues and the integrity of our FBI. So, David, thank you so much for joining me today.
You're very welcome, Deb. Very welcome.
Well, I'm going to jump in off with the word integrity. I've been doing a lot of reading about you, and I will go on record as saying you are a man of great integrity. I think it takes a lot to stand up to the establishment, and in this case, the Federal Bureau of Investigation, the FBI. But I'm going to jump in by asking you, do you believe that the FBI has strayed away from its principles of fidelity, bravery, and integrity?
Yes, I do. Let me qualify my answer to be specific. I think it's back on the right track under the current leadership of Kash Patel and Dan Bongino, and I don't envy their effort or what they have to do to correct the bureau because actually, as you note, I've been retired since 2000. Okay, so much of what I've done, I've seen happen that troubled me in my retirement. And to put a little context to it, I had a not an active duty agent actually call me about 5, 6, 7 years after I retired, Deb. And I used to work with him. We used to be work partners. And he told me this would have been, in the early 2000s. And he said, Baldo, that's what people called me. Baldo, you couldn't survive today in the FBI. You got out at a good time. Well, that I didn't know exactly what that meant at the time. I mean, I knew that I had had enough, okay, of micromanagement and that sort of thing from supervisors who really had no clue what real work is like in the bureau. But anyway, I didn't really know what he meant, on reflection of that, since what happened under Mueller and Jim Comey, maybe I can now see actually what he meant. Now, let me say this: the actions of a lot of our leaders, like Comey and Mueller, don't necessarily filter down to an agent investigating a given case or a given crime. But under Mueller, he centralized authority, which was not good. In my career, we were able to open and close cases with credible information at the field level, and that's what went by the wayside during the Mueller years. So that's a little qualification I'll put in there. Yes, I think the integrity has been suffering for a while. And I guess I can put a little context to that going back in my career, which you've probably read a little bit about if you've read a few articles. This doesn't happen overnight. The Stephen Friends and Garrett O'Boyles and Marcus Allens of the world. These are the FBI whistleblowers that I'm referring to. What they were exposed to and were asked to do was uh, it was coming. It was slow. I could see some of it, and it metastasized over time under Mueller and Comey. So I'll stop there, and if you want me to elaborate on any of that, I will.
Yeah, so I'm gonna key in now on Stephen Friend. For those who are listening, he was a FBI SWAT team member. I believe he was based in Florida, and he was punished for refusing to participate in what he saw as heavy-handed SWAT raids over the January 6th misdemeanors. So tell the listeners a little bit more about Stephen Friend.
Well, Stephen is a well. I consider Stephen and his fellow whistleblowers to be American patriots, and they stood up to a wrong that they saw going on. Taking the SWAT team issue specifically back to my time, I was on one of the early SWAT teams starting in the mid 70s and continued throughout 25 years. But I saw an increase in the usage of SWAT teams probably in my last 10 years in the Bureau through the 90s. And I attribute that, Deb, to I believe it was a check mark on a special agent in charge's performance rating. When they get performance ratings from the inspection division within the bureau or whatever, they've got a certain checklist that they go down. And how many times did you use the SWAT team? Well, when you put a numbers game, and this is what Stephen Friend was talking about too, it's not just the SWAT team usage. It's the he has talked about uh, the numbers of cases. Okay, that it's the FBI, and I went back to my early years, and I questioned that from day one. Is this a sales organization? Why are we manipulating case numbers just to have a big caseload? Why are we doing this? And I questioned that a lot, and I was taken to task for a lot of it too. But that goes along with the usage of SWAT teams. It's just how many times do you use a SWAT team, Mister Special Agent in charge? Well, if he's a guy with uh, maybe somewhat of a low integrity type, he's going to use SWAT teams more often than he would otherwise. Well, you take that attitude, and I'm not. Every special agent in charge was different. All of them didn't do this, but I saw it metastasizing, and the same goes for other areas of investigation regarding informants, the number of informant cases, and so forth. So it's a numbers game that Stephen Friend was referring to with regard to the SWAT team, which is what I'm referring to in retrospect now, going back to my career. But the same concept applies itself to other areas of our work, whether it's the number of caseload, numbers of cases we work, whether it's the number of informants. And I don't think it takes too much of an imagination to see how over time um, orders from FBI headquarters or from the Department of Justice, um, you're going to go out and you guys are going to arrest grandma, okay, for being in the U.S. Capitol or on the grounds of the U.S. Capitol. And this is an intimidation process, is what it is. I'm not the only one that's spoken out about this, Deb. There's been other retired agents also that have spoken out about it. The obvious ones, of course, were Roger Stone and the January 6th folks, which the January 6th, I call it hoax. Basically, it was, in my opinion, it was a setup job, and I don't think I'm the only retired FBI agent that thinks that either.
Okay, so what I'm hearing is that, and this is me paraphrasing, but the FBI, in some respects, has really become a check the box organization, where the more informants you have, the bigger your caseload, the padding the SWAT team out or putting the SWAT team out more uh, perhaps makes the supervisor in charge look good, justifies their salary, justifies their role, perhaps even in hiring new agents. So from a human resource perspective, that's what I'm taking out of everything you just said.
You are spot on. You are spot on, Deb. And it was that way, minus the SWAT team issue when I came on duty in 1969. It was already in play then, and because the SWAT teams weren't formed within the FBI. I believe 1973 was going to be the first SWAT team that was formed. But yep, it was a numbers game back then, and I mean it was obvious. I mean, I was told that it'll make you look good, and it'll make the SAC look good, and the supervisor look good. So that was all in place when before I was ever hired.
Right. Well, okay, so I want to jump now to you are a writer, a contributor to a online monthly magazine called the New English Review. And for those who are listening, you can find this at newenglishReview.org. It's a free monthly magazine, and it deals with a lot of cultural criticism issues, history, politics. And you submitted in November of 2024 a article titled "The Seeds of the Corruption of the FBI." And I'm going to read what you wrote in the opening paragraph because I think this really summarizes a lot of what we just discussed and what we're going to discuss in the rest of this interview. You wrote, much like a serial killer who does not start out as a serial killer, so too the current corruption within the FBI was not born overnight. The seeds were planted long ago and have grown and metastasized into what we see today in the treatment of patriotic and brave FBI whistleblowers who have spotlighted the ethical and moral fraud within the Bureau. And that that's a really powerful statement, and it definitely holds water because you've spent over 3 decades working in this organization. So you're not an outsider looking in, you're an insider. But how then, you go on in this article and you also talk about how informant caseloads were padded, how there were FBI agents that would pick up a phone book and pick out a random name and put them down as being an informant with no type of communication happening between that Jane or John Doe that they pulled out of the phone book. So this caseload padding, I think really is number one. I think it's a human resource issue that clearly isn't being handled well by the folks who do that in the FBI. But bigger than that, David, I want to talk about something that you refer to as the deep state. What is the deep state? What does that mean to you?
What it means to me, and we didn't use terms like the deep state during my career. But what it boils down to, in my view, is the bureaucracy. It is the bureaucracy of a big government organization that's established, and people have trouble when they try to go against the establishment, i.e., the deep state. It's if you read some of my items that have been published, um, I took on the establishment within the Bureau several times during my career. And unlike I didn't take it outside of the Bureau, I fought it from within, unlike the whistleblowers. But it wasn't as bad. It wasn't as bad during my career as it had become in their careers. Like I said earlier, it metastasized. So the deep state, I don't think, is anything more than the established bean counters, if you want to call them that, authoritarians within government agencies, not just the FBI. It occurs throughout government agencies, and so that is how I define the deep state. It's the authoritarian, established bureaucracy within these organizations that people like myself or others, I wasn't the only one, there's others who have challenged the Bureau from within over the years. And you just get knocked down and beat down. It's a losing battle because all of your superiors, your supervisors and ASACs and SACs, they're all in the same game together. So they're gonna knock down anybody that tries to rock the boat, so to speak. Okay, and take them to task. And I was taken to task by performance rating downgrades and a transfer. So
Well, and you say also in this article, you write that a supervisor had advised you that it did not matter who was president of the United States, whoever it would be gone in 4 to 8 years, and we, the FBI, will still be rocking along. And I guess I'm going to go now into my next question. The deep state, it's a very much a bureaucracy. Um, the question I want to ask you is it possible for the FBI to be apolitical? In other words, to operate without politics weighing on the decisions that are made, such as sending out a SWAT team to grandma's house because she happened to be in the Capitol building on January 6th.
it's very possible, in my opinion, to be apolitical. All you have to have at ground level is people with integrity, correct? That'll stand up, let's say at the director level or at the SAC level, to orders coming down from the Department of Justice, DOJ, or FBI headquarters. You're going to do such and such, and somebody standing up, somebody in leadership capacity standing up and saying, I don't think we're going to do that, and we're not going to do it. I'm going to not have my agents go out and arrest a 70-year-old grandma in Texas, living in her house, who is on grounds in on the Capitol grounds in January 6th. So, yeah, it takes someone of integrity, and there are many of us retired agents who probably thought that Chris Wray should either have done that or resigned. That's he certainly doesn't need the money. People like that don't need the money. So where is that integrity? Yes, it is possible, in my opinion, to be apolitical, and hopefully that's what's starting to take hold under Cash Patel.
Mm-hmm. Well, I guess my suggestion to the FBI's Human Resource Department would be, I know there's a slew of tests that and training that is involved. I believe that's happening still in Virginia. And I would suggest maybe having an integrity test added to those, other tests that are out there. And I'm sure in this day and age with technology, there is such a thing as that type of a test.
Right, but let me add a little caveat to that. It's good the way you put that, because supposedly we were all hired, correct? Because that the background investigations that were conducted on us, uh, we were supposedly somewhat of integrity. Well, when a person gets hired on and then you get subjected to these little incremental things that I'm referring to in my article that you're referring to, okay? Things that are not right. And you have some people that go along with that, okay? And so your integrity, depending how deep it runs, gets worn down. Well, do I want to go out and find a new job? And some people did. There were those that uh, that would have quit after a year or two and gone on to something else. But a lot of people like that steady government check. Sure, you can understand that, and people can understand that income coming in. So I'm going to do what I have to do just to stay on the job. And if I'm receiving pressure from my supervisor, well, then that's what I'm going to do. And then there's others that fight that. So.
Hmm. So I now that you're clarifying that, I think that the first thing is if the leadership doesn't have integrity, there's no way that the people below the leader are going to want to hold strong because they know that the head of their group doesn't have the integrity. So maybe do a whole new slew of leadership within the FBI, and that might be a jumping off point.
About 10 years ago, Deb, newly retired FBI agent at that time, who I never knew during my career, uh, moved here to Tennessee, and we met each other. And he told me, he said, David, he said, the FBI is ethically corrupt down to the field SAC level. That was his opinion at the time he retired. So that's a big portion of the FBI, okay? So when you see or hear people like Sean Hannity talk about it's just at the top, it's just at the seventh floor, I'm afraid not. I knew that was BS, when he was spouting it because um, I know the Bureau, I know human nature somewhat, and this agent that I'm referring to just put an exclamation point behind my suspicions at that time. So um, yeah, it's a lot of this was in place. You just going back for a second to what you said about the president will be gone in 4 or 8 years. That was obviously there when I came on board, right? That attitude, hubris, if you want to call it that, arrogance, okay. So you have the beginnings of this deep state before I ever came on board, which it's called the deep state now. Again, I refer to it as the established bureaucracy within the government, and it really runs the country, I guess, and makes decisions that elected officials are supposed to make, are elected representatives.
Hmm.
So that's the danger of the bureaucracy, unelected officials. You've seen that, you've read about it, and I'm sure your audience has too. That is the danger. There's a certain arrogance that develops within the organization that we can do anything, and nobody can do anything to us.
All right. Well, we're going to take a quick break. Stick around. More to come with retired FBI agent David Baldovin after this short break. Welcome back, everyone. Joining me today, still having a conversation, is retired FBI agent David Baldovin. And before we get back in to where we left off, we were talking about integrity. We were talking about the deep state bureaucracy. I just want to make a little, what I'll call a connect the dots moment here. So the FBI's intelligence activities are overseen by the Director of National Intelligence. And the Director of National Intelligence is actually an appointed position. And that individual is appointed by the President of the United States. And then the Senate goes on to provide their consent of the appointee. And if we connect that dot, and we would like to think that one of our government organizations, as big as the FBI, is supposed to be apolitical, I think we come to this crossroads where, on one hand, we're saying it's an agency that is there to serve the citizens of the United States, to keep our country safe, through investigations and collecting information. But then on the other hand, we have the boss, so to speak, the CEO of the FBI, in this case, the Director of National Intelligence, is being appointed by the president, who is tied into a political party. And I think that that's the problem, and where things have a tendency to go off track. Because, for example, during J6, we had the Democrat Party controlling the White House. We see how the people afterwards have been attacked and persecuted. And so I'm just going to throw that out there as a little thought, that oftentimes, you can look at something at surface value, at face value, and a title. But if you dig a little deeper and you see where that title comes from, how it's connected to everything that's happening, you can sometimes get a clearer picture of the truth. And after that, David, I want to jump into this word integrity. I want to go back there, because I think that integrity, no matter what your position or career or title is in life, is of the utmost importance, and it should not be compromised. What are your closing thoughts on integrity?
That was a good opening, Deb. Appreciate you making those comments. I want to qualify to the audience that a lot of the problems within the Bureau in recent years has come out of the intelligence side of the organization. And my whole career was involved in criminal investigations. So personally, I was never on the intelligence side of the FBI. But the integrity portion, one of the articles that I mentioned to you uh, uh, on the side a few minutes ago, I went back. One thing I didn't include in there was a recollection of, since I'm originally from the state of Wisconsin, if people will recall Scott Walker, the governor of Wisconsin. Okay, these political investigations that the FBI has been involved in recent years against their political opponents. Again, that did not happen overnight, like I referred to earlier. If people want to refer back to Scott Walker, the governor of Wisconsin, and who was president back then, and who was attorney general, it was Barack Obama and it was Eric Holder. Well, they well they didn't do it. The state of Wisconsin, in my opinion, a corrupt district attorney out of Milwaukee, went after Scott Walker and his conservative donors. State SWAT teams raiding conservative donors to the Scott Walker campaign in the state of Wisconsin. So, excuse me. So that the what went on here recently within the bureau, and we used to have still on the books under color of law investigations. Well, we used to investigate, and if found the evidence, we used to go after corrupt public officials such as sheriffs, okay, who under the color of law would violate federal criminal statutes that we would have jurisdiction over. So I was involved in several of those type of investigations in my career under color of law investigations. Well, now you have the FBI and the Attorney General investigating political opponents under color of law, don't you? Under the color of their badge and their credentials. Well, that's what went on in the state of Wisconsin, in my opinion, under the Barack Obama, Eric Holder regime. Uh, I don't sit here I don't have any documentary evidence that they directed it, but in my mind, uh, that's where this had to come from. It's the persecution of of political opponents, and they were trying out they were trying out their techniques on people like Governor Scott Walker, and actually later on under a friend of mine that was one of the founders of the Department of Homeland Security. Um, my name escapes me right now, but Phil Haney. I'm sorry, Phil Haney, which maybe you've read about. Yeah, they did the same thing to people like Phil Haney and his colleagues when Phil and his colleagues were trying to save American lives from jihadis, Middle Eastern jihadis. So anyway, that's a little side caveat that again, what we talk about did not happen overnight within the bureau, and it just metastasized over time, and we see the abuse. When I talked to an agent in Wisconsin years ago, it dawned on me that the Milwaukee office of the FBI was probably behind the scenes in going after Governor Scott Walker. Now, when we should have been investigating, in my opinion, the district attorney for a corruption charge, this is my opinion again, we should have been investigating them and other state officials for going after, under color of law, violations for going after Governor Scott Walker.
So it's what I'm hearing, this example that you're bringing up, it's really this, keep your head down, go along to get along, weaponizing a political party, one party against the other, or one party against the opposing party, even the donors, which is really quite scary and troubling to hear. And I'm going to just go back to one of the articles I read where there was this discussion about Stephen Friend, who was, this FBI agent who stood up against the bureaucracy. You were quoted as thanking Stephen Friend for having the courage to say hell no to the current bunch of FBI bureaucrats and tyrants. And then you were also quoted as saying the SWAT colleagues of yours who agreed to participate in these police state tactics are doing the same thing as those in Germany who participated in war crimes, only following orders, right? And I want to get into that because unfortunately, we saw a lot of that really happening publicly and openly throughout the country during COVID, where people were being enforced, their freedoms, their civil liberties were being violated. Churches, for example, let me go there. Churches that were forced to close, people who still attended were being approached by police officers. And the excuse that I heard every single time was, well, I may not agree with this, but I'm just following orders. And that's exactly what we heard being said in Germany when all of the atrocious war crimes were going on. Is that where we have come today as a country, as the United States of America, as a country of freedom of speech, freedom of religion? Is that where we're at today, David?
Hopefully, we've turned the corner. I'm an optimist at heart. Uh, I believe that good will come in the end. But uh, yeah, I think if anybody takes the time to do the research on Barack Obama, they will find out that he was mentored by a card-carrying member of the Communist Party when he was a youth. Okay, and I think authoritarians, tyrants, in my opinion, like Obama and Eric Holder, they see how easy it is to flip a an investigative agency because you're going to have a lot of people that will not say no, like Stephen Friend and Garrett O'Boyle. Okay, there's not a whole lot of people that are going to stand up, and I'm aware that Stephen lost many friends, close friends. I'm not going to get into specifics, but Yeah, very close friends within the Bureau that just shunned him after he did what he did. And that is sad, isn't it? That is very sad. What does that say um, about these people? Were they really even friends to begin with? You know, I've lost I've lost contact with friends because when they don't answer your respond to your emails anymore, that tells you something. When you get no response, in my opinion, that is a response. Now, regarding the Germany comparison, I don't know if you read the article or not, but I did a follow-up article on it. The Einsatzgruppen, the atrocities that occurred in Germany under the Nazi regime, a lot of the atrocities, you see these people being shot in trenches and so forth. They were not conducted by SS. They were conducted by normal, if you want to call it that, normal people. Okay. In other words, ordinary people. That is the title of the article, and that I refer to. But ordinary people came out of the German society. There were doctors and lawyers and whatever workers, and they were recruited into police battalions. And these police battalions are who executed so many Jews and Christians in the trenches. Not talking about the gas chambers, but these were ordinary people. And who are we, Deb? We are nothing more. Just because we've got credentials or a gun and a badge does not, yes, it's a title and everything, and people look up to that. But we are ordinary people that got hired out of the American society, many of us out of the heartland, okay. And we're just ordinary folks. So I see the parallel there between what happened in Germany and what happened with FBI SWAT teams regarding January 6th that you're referring to.
Yeah. No, and I do also see that parallel. And I guess that, it just I think, just when you feel that you can't be disappointed or let down enough by humanity as a whole, you have, there's another instance that or something that happens, and you realize that you can be. Let's jump into, and I guess what I want to do you know where Stephen Friend is today? What happened to him after, he stood up to the FBI bureaucracy?
Physically, I think Stephen lives in Florida. I don't know his employment. Um, if he's been able to get hired, the bureau not only went after Stephen, but they went after his wife too. I don't know if you know that or if your listeners know that, but
No, I don't, and I'd like to hear about that. We have a few
well, I
minutes,
can't
so.
be specific on that, but she had she was a working lady too. His wife was, and I believe she's from somewhere originally in Eastern Bloc countries in Europe. And yeah, they were. This is when I guess they were up in Nebraska or wherever. She had a good job, and through this is what the government weaponization of Facebook and Twitter and all of that goes along with everything we're talking about. Yeah, she lost her employment um, uh, because of what her husband was doing. Now that's the generalization because I don't know the specifics. Maybe I knew them a year or two ago, but I can't recall the specifics right now. So it didn't. It affects many other people too.
Mhm.
If people think it just affects the person that got fired or that was relieved, it affects the whole family. It affects their ability to get a job and so forth because the bureau under the Biden regime they were not going to give a recommendation to anybody to hire these people.
Mm. That is definitely what I would call weaponization of government. And I think that so many people who work in government, so many of our elected officials, not all, but many don't understand that they work for us, we the people, we elect them, and they are there to do the will of the people, not to sit in these positions and be self-serving and do what is in their best interest, as opposed to what's for our best interest.
I watched some of Kash Patel's testimony last week before Congress, and I think you can see that arrogance and hubris coming from in the a certain political side in their questioning of Cash, and he fired right back. I was proud of him. So yeah, you can see that they don't have any concept of the fact that they work for the American people. And
Mm.
I can recall one small, again, these little things come back to me. I remember being in my office of assignment at the time. This would have been sometime in the 90s, probably. And I was told the office was undergoing inspection from the inspection division, and I was told that by the inspector that was talking to me that I had to do what the SAC told me to do. And I said, I don't work for the SAC. He doesn't sign my check. I work for the American people. Now you see, these people don't want to hear something like that. I mean, I was not going along to get along, but again, I'm far enough along in my career that they're not going to do anything to me right then. And I can't recall if I was retirement age or not at that point, but at any rate, yeah. But they come back at you in different subtle ways. Okay, like downgrading your performance rating and so forth. That's how it's done.
And relocating maybe to the middle of nowhere.
That happened earlier in my career, which actually um, I tell people it turned out to be a blessing. You see.
Hmm.
Yeah, it turned out great for me because I did some of my best work after I was banished.
Wow.
But
Yeah.
people around me, the agents around me, they became guilty by association then with me. So that's how it happens with small-minded people, insecure people who have to have a title to make themselves feel important. That's uh, it's amazing. I mean, we used to talk when I say we, myself and other agents who were out there trying to do the job for the American people. Uh, you know, if we used to comment, if people only knew, okay, if people only knew. Well, guess what? After the last several years, I guess if one hasn't been living under a rock, now they know, right? And unfortunately, it metastasized into what we have seen recently in recent years.
All right. So with President Trump now in the White House, and this is your opinion, because you worked for, as I said, 3 decades in the FBI. We have Kash Patel at the helm of this ship, so to speak. What, I mean, it's a good thing. I think you and I can both agree on that. Um, what do you see changing, if anything, to affect some of the, bad things that have been happening with the FBI?
I think that there were ethical, moral, and possibly criminal violation. Well, we know there was criminal violations, fraud in the FISA warrants. You know, in the Russia hoax investigation on President Trump. So those are not the other side is going to try and say he's going after his political enemies. No, hopefully Kash Patel is going to go after legitimate violations of federal statutes that were violated by these people in their efforts to corrupt the legal system, uh, the corruption of the legal system to go after their political opponents, which I was referring to earlier with Scott Walker in Wisconsin and so forth. It's the weaponization, the corruption of the legal process that these people engaged in, which included fraud against the government, fraud against the court, the FISA court, in obtaining uh, these wiretap warrants to go after President Trump and his associates.
Mm-hmm.
So, yes, we have a president who loves America, in my opinion. We have someone, in my opinion, who does not. He thinks he um, can wheel and deal because he's a businessman. He can maybe deal with somebody like Vladimir Putin and the tyrants in the Middle East, but I'm not sure he's totally versed in ideologies of these people. That's
Mm-hmm.
just my opinion, and I think a person has to understand the ideologies, the motivations behind these people, because at the basic thing is Vladimir Putin is a communist, KGB. So that's what he's dealing with, and uh, I hope that he's slowly coming around to seeing that. But he's got to have the right advisors. Uh, I think Kash Patel is going to tell it like it is, I would guess, to the president, speaking truth to power. I guess that's, um, during several times during my career, I guess people could say that's what I did. You speak truth to power. And, but the person has to be willing to listen and to hear it too, because one person, no matter who he is, cannot know it all. Okay. There's no way one person can know it all. So, yes, it's great that President Trump is in office, but what happens next? What
Well,
happens next?
I think that that's a great point that you made. And I think back to Sun Tzu, who was a military strategist. He often said, if you do not know your enemies nor yourself, you will be imperiled in every single battle. So I want to just thank you, David Baldovin, so much for joining me today. And I look forward to another conversation with you in the near future.
Sounds good, Deb. Thank you, Mary Deb, and thank you, America Out Loud. You folks have a great day.
All right. Thank you. God bless.